A giant sauropod began life small enough to fit inside an egg. Yet some eventually carried bodies weighing tens of tons. That transformation did not take centuries. The first clue to how dinosaurs grew so fast is hidden inside their fossil bones, where microscopic canals and growth marks preserve a record of living tissue being built at remarkable speed. But there is an important catch. There was no single dinosaur growth pattern. A hadrosaur, a tyrannosaur, an armored dinosaur, and a giant sauropod could reach adulthood in very different ways. To understand their growth, we have to stop imagining dinosaurs as oversized modern reptiles and start reading their skeletons as biological archives. A fossil bone may look like solid stone, but a thin section under a microscope reveals an intricate structure. Paleontologists usually sample a weight-bearing bone, such as a femur or tibia, and cut out a narrow section. They grind it until light can pass through. The resulting pattern can resemble a city seen from above. The tiny openings are vascular canals. Blood vessels once ran through them, delivering oxygen, minerals, and nutrients to growing tissue. The orientation of microscopic bone fibers also matters. Slowly deposited lamellar bone is highly organized. Rapidly deposited woven fibered bone is messier because the body is building it faster than the fibers can be arranged into neat layers. Many dinosaurs combined rapidly formed bone with a dense network of vascular canals. This is often called fibrolamellar bone. It is not exclusive to dinosaurs, but in living animals, it is associated with sustained, relatively rapid growth. Finding it across many dinosaur groups showed that their bones were not being constructed at the typically slow pace once imagined for giant, sluggish reptiles. That does not mean a thin section works like a speedometer. Bone tissue can tell us whether growth was relatively fast or slow. But converting that pattern into kilograms gained per year requires several more steps. The next clue is a series of rings within the bone cortex. These are commonly called lines of arrested growth, or lags. They formed when bone deposition slowed dramatically or paused, often as part of an annual seasonal cycle. Counting them can provide an estimate of age. Measuring the distance between them shows how much the bone expanded during each interval. Wide spacing usually represents a period of rapid growth. Narrower spacing near the outside suggests growth was slowing. In some mature animals, the outer edge contains several tightly packed lines in slowly formed bone. This external fundamental system is strong evidence that the skeleton had nearly stopped increasing in size. The comparison with tree rings is useful, but it is not perfect. The expanding marrow cavity can destroy the earliest growth record. Later remodeling can erase or blur older marks. Some bones preserve age better than others. Closely grouped lines may represent one difficult year rather than several separate years. Paleontologists, therefore, compare multiple bones and multiple individuals whenever possible. They then place estimated age on one side of a graph and body size on the other. Size may come from bone dimensions, limb circumference, or a three-dimensional reconstruction of body volume. The fitted line is a growth curve. A common result is an S-shaped curve. Growth begins relatively slowly in a tiny juvenile. It accelerates as the animal becomes larger and finally decelerates near adult size. Yet this shape should not simply be imposed on every dinosaur. Fossil samples are often small, and mature individuals may be missing. Different mathematical models can produce different estimates from the same specimens. Maiasaura provides one of the clearest examples because researchers studied 50 tibiae from this late Cretaceous hadrosaur. Its bone tissue was extremely vascular during early life. The growth model suggested that Maiasaura achieved more than half of its adult tibia circumference during its first year. It may have begun reproducing at around 3 years old, while its skeleton was still growing. It approached skeletal maturity after about 8 years. That is not the slow schedule of a similarly sized crocodilian. It describes an animal racing through a dangerous juvenile stage. It was rapidly building the legs, muscles, digestive system, and body mass needed for life as a large herbivore. Now, compare that with Tyrannosaurus. Older growth curves portrayed Tyrannosaurus rex as experiencing an especially dramatic adolescent surge, reaching nearly full size within about 2 decades. Expanded sampling has complicated that image. A histological study using 17 Tyrannosaur individuals proposed more prolonged subadult growth. Some models approached a size plateau only around 35 to 40 years of age. The exact curve remains open to revision. Researchers must decide which marks represent separate years and restore rings lost to remodeling. They must also convert limb dimensions into body mass. The durable conclusion is not that every Tyrannosaurus followed one precise schedule. It is that Tyrannosaurs combined rapid bone formation with years of sustained growth. A better fossil sample can reshape the curve. Sauropods created an even greater biological problem. Every sauropod started inside an egg, placing a practical limit on hatchling size. To become a multi-ton adult, the animal had to add an enormous amount of tissue after hatching. Juvenile sauropod limb bones commonly contain highly vascular fibrolamellar tissue, evidence of rapid deposition. In many specimens, clear growth marks are scarce during early life and become more obvious only when growth begins to slow. The bones were also heavily remodeled to support an enormous, active body, sometimes erasing part of their own history. Sauropod gigantism, therefore, cannot be reduced to one spectacular teenage growth spurt. It involved a high capacity for tissue production maintained over many years. Their column-like limbs supported increasing mass. Their air sac-based respiratory system, inferred from the air spaces in their vertebrae and their relationship to birds, would have helped move large volumes of air efficiently. Abundant food still had to be gathered, digested, and converted into new body tissue every day. Even among giant carnivorous dinosaurs, there were multiple routes to large size. A broad comparison of 42 non-bird theropod species found that evolutionary changes in growth rate and changes in growth duration contributed roughly equally to their enormous range of body sizes. Some lineages became larger mainly by growing faster. Others extended the number of years during which substantial growth continued. Many used a mixture of both. That distinction is crucial. Final size is not simply a measure of speed, it is the result of growth rate multiplied across time. 2 dinosaurs could reach similar masses, even if one grew intensely for a shorter period and the other added tissue more gradually for longer. Other lineages reveal still more variation. Some stegosaurs and ankylosaurs appear to have deposited bone more gradually than many hadrosaurs and sauropods. The late Triassic sauropodomorph Plateosaurus grew rapidly overall, but individuals of similar size could show very different numbers of growth marks. Its schedule seems to have been flexible, perhaps responding strongly to food, rainfall, or other environmental conditions. So, what powered rapid dinosaur growth? The safest answer is not one special organ or a single metabolic label. Fast growth required a connected biological system. Dense blood supplies fed active growth zones. Elevated metabolic capacity provided the energy to manufacture tissue. Efficient lungs and circulation moved oxygen through the body. A productive digestive system supplied raw material. Hormones controlled when resources went into bones, muscles, fat, display structures, and reproduction. Bone histology supports growth rates that were generally faster than those of many living reptiles, but it is not a fossil thermometer. It cannot by itself tell us the exact body temperature of a dinosaur, or prove that every species regulated heat exactly like a modern bird. Dinosaurs occupied many climates, evolved different body sizes, and almost certainly varied in physiology. Rapid growth also came with costs. A juvenile building tissue quickly needed a steady supply of food and oxygen. Illness, drought, or seasonal shortage could leave a visible interruption in its bones. Reaching a larger size quickly may have reduced the time spent vulnerable to predators, but the energy demand would have been relentless. Some dinosaurs apparently began reproducing before skeletal growth had finished. In a few specimens, researchers have identified medullary bone, a temporary calcium-rich tissue associated with egg production inside individuals that were still actively growing. That means energy could be divided among continued body growth, survival, and reproduction, rather than waiting for the skeleton to reach its final dimensions. This is why the question is not really how dinosaurs grew so fast. It is how different dinosaurs balanced speed, duration, seasonality, and maturity. The microscope shows the common foundation. Many dinosaurs possessed blood-rich bone tissue capable of rapid construction. The growth rings then reveal how each lineage used that capacity. Maiasaura accelerated early. Giant sauropods sustained enormous production. Theropods repeatedly altered both growth rate and growth duration. Plateosaurus could change its schedule with its circumstances. A dinosaur skeleton was never just a frame becoming larger. It was a construction project that sped up, slowed down, paused, restarted, and eventually approached its limit. Fossil bones preserve that changing tempo. And the real secret of dinosaur size was not one universal growth spurt. It was evolution learning to rewrite the schedule.